Hi mechanics, welcome back to my channel Monkey Wrench. I'm Kelly, the monkey with the wrench. This is the last in a series of 3 videos that I'm doing updating the Craftsman series of I Bought a $1 Zero Turn. In the last 2 videos we fixed the charging system, and we fixed all the wiring up, and we put a new starter solenoid on it, and hopefully we won't have any more electrical issues. That was my fault for not doing those things in the beginning. That just kind of led to a domino effect. Thankfully it didn't cost much, but everything's done. Watch those videos to see that stuff. And in those videos you would have noticed that when I started the machine, it's kind of spitting and sputtering just a little bit. It's not running as nicely as I want it to. It's kind of got a little bit of vibration. It's just not running super smooth. It's running pretty good, but since I have it, I'm going to be putting new spark plugs in it, which you don't need to see me do. If you can't put in a spark plug, you probably shouldn't be working on these things. And what else we're going to do is, and I'm limited on space, so filming is going to be fun. But the other thing that we're going to do here is we are going to set the valves on this. Now what happens is, a lot of times people will have a machine and it'll run a little bit rough, and they'll put in new spark plugs and they'll adjust carburetors, and basically they do everything they can small to get it back to running right, until finally they've gone through all those things and there's nothing else that can be done. And in a lot of cases it's as simple as the valves have never been adjusted. Now these valves on any machine should be checked and set at least once every 2 years. And if you're using a machine commercially, then it should be done every single year. They just get a little bit worn, they get a little bit out of adjustment, and the valves are what make your intake and exhaust valves open at the correct time. And if they're not opening at the correct time on both sides, they won't match up and the machine won't run real good. You can get loss of power and you can end up damaging the machine. So you should check your valve adjustment. It's real simple to do, and you should be doing it every year, every other year. You don't know how many customers I've spoken to that have brought me machines and said, I bought this 10 years ago and I'm not sure why it's not running great. And I pulled the valve cover, and found that instead of being at 5 thousandths, it was somewhere around 25 thousandths. And one cylinder wasn't even working. One side wasn't even working, because the valve adjustment was so far out that it was no longer opening and closing the intake and exhaust valve. So they were running on one side of the engine, one cylinder. So just for time purposes, I've already taken out the 4 bolts. There's just 4 bolts in this case. Now I don't know when the last time this was taken off, but apparently whoever put it on might have used Permatex, which is what we're going to do. Now that's good, because it gives me the opportunity to show you, if you can't just tap it off, you don't want to bend this case. You don't want to bend this. It's metal, but you'll bend it. So let me get a screwdriver and see what it's going to take to get this off. Now the biggest thing about these valve covers is you can jam a screwdriver in there, and don't worry, you're not going to hurt the head, unless you jam in there with a chisel and it's real sharp and you hit it hard with a hammer and you might cut like a groove in it or something. That's not the problem. The problem is people will get a screwdriver up in there, they'll jam it in there, and they'll start bending, and they'll actually bend and twist the cover, and that's what we don't want to do. So I'm going to go in from several different angles and see. I'm staying at the corners basically. If you go in the middle between the 2 bolts, if you got a bolt at this end and a bolt at this end, and you go in the middle, you have more of a chance of bending that cover. And I don't care what anybody says, you could try and bend it back the best you can, and fill in the difference with some Permatex, but it's never going to be right, and it may end up always leaking on you for the rest of your life, and you won't be able to figure out why, and it's because you bent the dang cover. But if you just go in from all four corners where it's the strongest and give it a couple of taps, chances are this thing's just gonna fall right off for you. Now, somebody used Permatex, so before I put this back on, I'm gonna have to clean this off completely with a razor blade and then a wire wheel, and I'll do the same thing here. It's no big deal. They didn't use a whole lot, and what's most important, honestly, is the two sides and the bottom. If you think of it, the oil splashes through here, but there's no pressure, so it's going to splash through there, it's going to settle to the bottom, and it's going to find its way back into the engine block. So the two upright sides and the bottom are what's most important. Now, I have watched plenty of videos. I've also been doing this for 30 years. I know I don't look that old, but I am 50. I've been doing this for 30 years, and there are two schools of thought. One that says, pull the spark plug, find top dead center, that's the most important thing. Well, if that's how you feel comfortable doing it, you do it. And if you don't like it, don't leave a comment on this video. Just go watch another channel, because I'm not interested. What is important is when you turn, you can use this flywheel to turn the motor, and you can watch your valves go in and out. That was the intake. Now if I keep turning, now the exhaust is going in. You see that? So I know as long as the exhaust valve is pulled all the way in, then there's no pressure on my intake, and vice versa. If I turn that back around again so the intake is pulled in, then I know there won't be any pressure on the exhaust. And all we're doing is looking to check the clearance right here. The spring side, this is your valve, and this is your rocker arm. And what we're interested in here, and I use 4 and 6. I use 4 on the intake and 6 on the exhaust. So if we're working on the top one right now with the aluminum push rod, I know that's my intake. I just want to double check. It's not that far off. It's still running pretty good. Enough that it might just need some spark plugs. But I just want to double check. Check the spacing on your particular machine. You look that up. Don't take my word for it. But all I want to do is take my feelers gauge and put it in there, and I can feel that that's pretty loose. Okay? When you put that in there, it should almost hold itself. So I'm just going to pop up. It's 5, 6, 7. I'm just going to go to 8. Okay? Just going to go to 8 real quick and see if 8 goes in there. And 8 still goes in there. So I know that I'm off. Okay? I know I'm off. I could probably put a 10 in there, maybe even a 12. 9, 10. There's a 10. Just for you guys, just so you know. I'm already at twice what I should be. There's a 10. It's still going in there, and I still have room. So I'm not interested in seeing just how far off it's off. If it's supposed to be at 4 or 5 and that's a 10 and it still goes in there and with enough space that it won't even hold it, it barely holds it, I know I'm twice as far out as I'm supposed to be. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to make my adjustments, and I'm going to move the camera so you can see better, and I'll be right back. Okay, I lost the footage because I thought I was on video and my phone reset to photo. So when I started the video, I thought I was recording, but I wasn't. So my valve cover here had been put on by Permatex. Whoever put it on last used that, which is perfectly fine. When you take it off with a screwdriver, be sure that you stay on the corners with your screwdriver. If you try to force it between where the bolts go, you could bend the case and then you'll never get it flat, and it may leak on you. What you're going to need is a T40 and a 13 millimeter. Now the 13 millimeter is to fit the silver locking nut, and the T40 is for the center here. Okay, so here's what you need to do. You need to back out your locking nut to give you some space to work. That locks down on your rocker arm. Now I'm going to take, I set my valves at 5 6/1000. Sometimes I go as low as 4/1000, but on this particular one I'm doing 5/1000 on the intake, 6/1000 on the exhaust. This is a box store machine, not a commercial machine. They use brushed aluminum connecting rods. That's why this one is like dull silver and this one is darker and it's shinier. It's because this is steel and this is aluminum. So that's how I can tell the difference between exhaust and intake. I'm going to take my 5/1000 and I'm going to fit it in here in the back that's on the spring side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this inner screw until I have sufficient drag here on my feelers gauge on the other side. Now it should hold it in place if it's set correctly. And once it is, all I'm going to do is use my star drive to hold it right where it is. I'm going to back my locking nut all the way down against the rocker arm, and then I'm going to take it back out. I'm going to put on my wrench first, then I'm going to put this through it, and I'm going to tighten that down without letting the center move. Now it's kind of tricky and sometimes you'll have to do it twice. If you're lucky, you get it on the first try, but I'm not usually that lucky. Now I've got sufficient drag. It feels good. I can let it go and it holds itself in there and I'm good. Now, again, I've seen videos where people say, pull the spark plug, find top dead center. I've been doing this 30 years and I haven't done that in 29 years because it's just not that important. If you have the engine turned so that this push rod seesaws this rocker arm to put pressure on this valve, that means that this one has no pressure on it at all. Now when I turn the wheel up there with my hand and this push rod pushes this out, puts pressure on that rocker arm, that seesaw, and pushes that one in, this one won't have pressure. And that's all I care about, is that there's no pressure on it. So I'm going to turn this again by hand. There goes the exhaust coming back out into the seated position. Now as I turn it, the intake is going to get pushed in. And there it goes, you see it? And I'm just going to make sure that that's pushed in. And now look at that. I don't have any pressure on the bottom one, on the exhaust. So all I'm doing now is checking. Again, this thing ran pretty okay, but because it's my machine and it doesn't cost me anything to have it fixed, I just decided that I was going to go ahead and check the valves. They need to be reset at least once a year if you're a commercial, and every 2 years if you're a homeowner. People let them go 10 years. People let them go their whole life and never check them. Holy crap. So again, that thing's way out. The first one was out at 10, 11 thousandths. I don't know if I have that video clip or not. I don't know what got lost. But here's 10 thousandths right here. This is almost double what it's supposed to be. And that almost goes in. So good. It's not out quite double, but close enough. So I'm at 6 thousandths here. I'm going to loosen this up. The outer locking nut. I'm going to hold the center. I'm going to loosen up the outer locking nut a little bit more, just so I have some room so I can, what holds it is the inner screw. So I have enough room to bring that in where I need it to be. And what I'm looking for is just enough space that I can force this feelers gauge in and that it drags the whole time. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to almost force this thing in because I want it to have some drag. When I let it go, I want it to stay right there. Sorry again, this damn thing's in the way, but there ain't nothing I can do about that. So I'm just about forcing that in, and I pretty much like where that is. So now again, I'm going to take my star drive and put it there just to hold it, just so that the inner screw doesn't spin. Now I'm going to turn that back down with my finger. That outer nut is going to go all the way as far as it can towards the rocker arm. Now I'm going to put this back on, put this through it, hold this center from turning, and I'm going to tighten her down. Okay, now I'm just going to double check that we got enough drag, that I feel good about that. And like I said, sometimes you might have to do it twice. I don't know if I guess it's got enough drag. It just doesn't feel quite right. So I'm going to do it again. Because sometimes you have the feelers gauges in sort of at an angle with a little bit of twist. Could be anything. If it doesn't feel right, try it again. That's all. That is all. I'm going to do it until I feel some drag. Just like that. And I'm going to tighten down the outer nut. And sometimes when you go to tighten down the outer nut, it'll actually still spin the inner nut just slightly. So sometimes it'll get too tight on you. Sometimes it'll stay loose. So that is the only tricky part about trying to do that. As Terrell would say, it's not rocket science, it's not the space shuttle, it's just a freaking lawnmower. That feels pretty good to me. I like that. Now we're set. So now, if I want to, I can turn it around until the top one is back out and the bottom one is down. Just give it a full set of rotations. The bottom one is in now and the top one is out, and I set that one at 5 thousandths. So I'm just going to double check that by pulling out the 5 thousandths and make sure I can still get it in with a little bit of drag, and that feels pretty good to me. Now I'm going to spin it some more until the top one goes in. You see, top one goes in. That means there's no pressure on the bottom one, and that was 6 thousandths for me. Again, check your own specs, and that feels pretty good. So my valves were twice as far out as they should have been, and it still ran okay. Now they're set proper. Now all I have to do is take a razor blade to get the Permatex off outside of here, clean this up, put some new Permatex on it, put these back in place, and then I could set the other side. Now you don't need to see all that. The important part is adjusting the valves, and that should take away the spitting and sputtering and a little bit of rough running going on. Like I said, I'm also going to change my spark plugs because that also could help with that problem. And when I get this cover back on and get that side done, we'll start it up and I'll show you how it sounds. And if you're wondering how it sounded beforehand because I didn't film it on this video, watch the last video where I changed the starter solenoid. It runs fine and you can hear it not running great. Okay, now as you can see, I got the cover all cleaned up. I still have to clean up here, but I wanted to show you a couple of things. One, this stuff's pretty easy to get off. As long as you get the majority of it off, you're going to be okay. Two, there's always going to be oil that's in here. Now, with Permatex, they say in order for it to seal, the old timers, the people that are older than me, thank you guys for watching, by the way. I get a lot of old timers that watch my channel. And thank you all for the knowledge that you have passed down over the years. But basically, you're always going to have a little bit of oil that drains out of here that's residual from the last time that this machine was run. So just take and try and dry out as much as you can. Now you can also take a little bit of carb spray, which I might do after I clean the rest of this gump off of here. The reason I'm doing this before I do that is because that's going to take me a good 10 or 15 minutes to finish getting cleaned. Now I'm just going to take some of this Permatex Black, this is what I use, and I'm just going to put some all the way around here. Decent little amount, but not like you're caulking a sink or something, because you don't really want it to squeeze that much. You just want to put a nice thin layer all the way around. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to leave this for about 15 or 20 minutes. I'm going to leave it set right here in the air, because what I actually want it to do is skin over. What I want it to do is sort of get hard, start to harden just a little. Now this doesn't ever get completely hard, but I want it to skin over. That way in 20 minutes or half an hour, when I tighten it down, it's already there. It won't all just squeeze out from between the two pieces of metal I'm trying to put together. So just spread it out. This is just in case anybody's ever put gasket maker on anything and they don't know how much to put on. This is just to give you an idea that it doesn't take a whole lot. There's no real oil pressure up here. Basically, you just want a almost paper thin level layer. Now I'm just going to leave that sit right there and dry for the next 20 or 30 minutes. And while that happens, I'm going to go ahead and clean off all the way around here, and we'll be back. Alright, now I got that all cleaned off. I'm just going to spray it down here. A little bit of carb cleaner, and that'll cut whatever oil film might be left on there. And make sure that we're good to go. Again, the gasket maker makes its own gasket. So the idea is, yeah, it really won't stick to an oily surface, but we're not exactly worrying about it sticking to the surface. What we want for it to do, if you were just using a cardboard gasket, it wouldn't stick to either surface until it felt like it, you know, melted to it. What we want is for this to form its own gasket, that's all. So make sure OHV, not VHO or AHO, overhead valve. We're going to put that back in place. We're going to put our 4 bolts back in it. And here's the trick. Now it's been about 20 minutes since not for you, but for me, it's been about 20 minutes since I put that Permatex on there. And it's going to be, I'm not doing the rest of the video till tomorrow. The mosquitoes are killing me, and it's about to rain. But I waited about 20 to 30 minutes. I just let it sit here and sort of skin over. And now I put my 4 bolts back in place, and here I'm just going to hand tighten them. That's all. I'm not tightening them down. I'm going to use my fingers if I can get them to go all the way. But I am not tightening them. I'm just turning them with my fingers until they stop. All 4 of them. And I'm going to give this about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I want that Permatex to dry out and actually keep its current thickness. I don't want it to get thinner. If I were to crank down on this with a wrench right now, it would squeeze the metal together, and you know it would shoot that Permatex out. So some places would be thinner than others, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to leave that for an hour, hour and a half, and then I'm going to go ahead and tighten those down. I might even not tighten them down till tomorrow, because it's in as far as it'll go. I could probably even grab the 10, but it's underneath of the camera, so I don't want to do that. Sorry, my face is in your face. I think they're 10s. So if I were to take that and that, just to show you that it's kind of like a screwdriver, I'm not tightening them. I'm just making sure that they go in until they stop turning with very little pressure. And that is where it's going to stay, like I said, probably till tomorrow. The longer you leave it, the more it'll dry out. And that way later when you try to squeeze these two together, they'll hold their thickness because the gasket in between will have firmed up. So that's all you have to do. Don't be in a hurry whenever you're dealing with Permatex. I'm not going to run this thing until tomorrow. And honestly, I probably won't run it until the next day because I'm not doing that side until tomorrow because of the mosquitoes and the rain. And I like to give Permatex 24 hours before it dries, before you really use it. So that's fine just like that till tomorrow. That side's going to get done. Then it's going to wait 24 hours. I'm going to tighten them both down completely and our valves will be done. So I hope this video helps somebody out there to make your machine run smoother. I will wait and post this so that I can show you 2 days from now that when I start it up, it runs fabuloso with the new spark plugs and the valve adjustments. Because I know that the carburetor's good. There's no real adjustments on them. There's a little, but I'm not going to go into that because you might mess yourself up. I've been doing it a long time. So if you want to see how how the machine ran, watch the last video, changing the solenoid on this one. And I did another video right before that, and I don't even remember what it was. I changed the solenoid. Oh, and I checked the charging station. Both of those you can hear that it kind of spits and sputters. So go watch one of those videos, hear what it sounds like, then come back here and hear what it sounds like now. Anyway, for the rest of you, thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. We are 9 subscribers away from 2,000. We've gained 1,000 subscribers in the last 60 days. So I thank you to all of you, and we'll see you soon.